Our next speaker is Sue Peters, who's been involved with that AMI for a long time and has developed her own groups in New York City. And Sue went along to that same conference that Rob went to. So, and Sue has been deeply involved with the repelling the move by the people that Howard was talking about to remove the monetary reform plank from the Green Party platform. Sue, Howard and Joe and a number of others here, well, they made it. They put on a heroic effort to defeat some pretty heavy artillery. So, well, at the end we'll give a round of applause for Sue and for everyone else involved in that effort. And we'll now hear it from Sue herself. Please welcome Sue Peters.
Thank you. I want Joe to stand up. Howard to stand up. Because the three of us, for the time being, have repelled MMT from taking our monetary reform out of our platform. Our platform has the NEED Act in it. And that's why MMT is coming into the party. So this is the recent history of MMT in the Green Party. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to first give you a history of greening the dollar, which is our monetary reform in the National Green Party platform. And then MMT started coming into the Green Party, the National Green Party in 2017, last year. I'll talk about how they proceeded. It's a good study of how their ideas are inserted into the conversations and take over. And then this year, how Joe and Howard and I dealt with what was going on with changing the platform in the National Party. And then future organizing, which I'm hoping people might want to join us. Okay, here we go. Part one, the history of greening the dollar. So these two Missouri Greens, Ben Gelsis and Dee Berry, met and heard Stephen Zelling to give a talk on monetary reform in Kansas City, Missouri. And he went there twice, in the year 2000 and in the year 2007. I mean, Stephen, you can pick up from the conference, he was going around always finding people and talking to them. And this had this magnificent result. Dee Berry said, I was impressed with what I heard for those 2 times and saw the fit with the Green Party. She was very active, has a long history with the Green Party. And Stephen, because of all that, in Reading, Pennsylvania, the annual meeting of the National Green Party, Stephen came and gave a panel. Greening the Dollar, it was called, How Monetary Reform Could Restore and Solidify Our Democracy. And Dee said, well received, but we realized it required considerable educational process for the Green Party. Because remember, the Green Party is like any ordinary American. They haven't been taught what a monetary system is. So, this, let me just say as an aside, this MMT coming into the Green Party gave us a chance to start that education in depth with some of the party people, and we're trying to keep that going. And I'm sure MMT will force us to keep it going. So Dee Berry and Stephen Zelling worked together to educate Greens and add greening the dollar to the national platform. And there's a real process to that. The Green Party is a very grassroots organization. Things come up from the county organizations to the state, and the state Green Party is really where the consensus is, and then it goes up to the national party. So Dee said, the monetary system is an invisible system. People are made to think they can't understand it. And Ben said, the Greens have a systems approach for serious problem change. The AMI message can contribute tremendously. Because remember, our message is it's a system, and we need to change the system to help our society. So in 2010, the national platform got the basics of our monetary reform. This is just what was in the platform in 2010. And this was the work of Dee Green, Ben Chelsis, and some other women in the Missouri Greens and around the country in other Green parties. It's a slow process of, you have to educate the 100 and plus members of the National Committee who are going to vote on the platform. So there's a whole process of education. And I love, if you listen to Dee on the video where she explains this, she said she had so much fun working with these other women around the country getting this into the platform. I thought that was great. Yeah. It can be fun. Monetary reform can be enjoyable. Okay, so in 2010 we had the crisis in our financial system makes it imperative that we restructure our monetary system. It is both possible and necessary for our government to take back its special money creation privilege and the privilege banks now have to create money. Okay, that was in the platform, 2010. 2012, it was even more. The 3 non-negotiables were put into the platform under greening the dollar and called greening the dollar. So we have nationalized the 12 Federal Reserve banks, and the privileged banks now have to create money, and new money added, fair distribution across the United States, creating good jobs. Now, here's Howard Switzer. Howard is, what, 17 years in the Green Party, right? And how many years have you been on the National Committee?
17.
17. So here we have a voice for our monetary reform on the National Committee of the party.
Yeah.
And as Howard said, to have control of public policy, the public must control the monetary system. So, Howard was a 2001 founding member of the Tennessee Green Party. And in 2007, he heard Stephen Zerlinga talk at Reading, Pennsylvania. And in 2013, Stephen called him up and invited Howard to this conference. And at the conference, Howard bought The Lost Science of Money. And he started reading it. And since reading it, he's been a constant presence on the GP National Committee listserv, which is going on all the time. Different issues come up to be decided on by these 100+ members. He's connecting issues caused by the bank-run monetary system to the solutions in greening the dollar. Very important that he's been doing that. In 2015, at this conference here, the Greens were offered a discount to come to the conference. And Howie Hawkins was the keynote speaker. He's a very well-known Green candidate in New York State. And Howie knows the monetary system. And he gave a keynote speech at that conference on the history of third parties in U.S. history, including the Greenback Party. Most third parties have dealt with the monetary system. And he knows the history very well. And after Howie's talk, during the Q&A, we asked him, Howie, what should we do next? Because there were, I think, 40% of the audience that year were Greens. And his answer was, create a website to teach people about money and about the NEED Act in the Green Party national platform. But one thing, keep it simple. So here is the website. From that meeting, a group of people kept meeting, and we created it, and we have our webmaster back there. Stand up. This is that's Alan Smith from New York, and Alan has been our webmaster, totally voluntary. And he knows the money system. He teaches at the Henry George School. He teaches about the monetary system. So, and this, we kept it very simple. I encourage everyone to go look at it. And we're always pointing Greens to it who don't know. And so, this is a way to understand it. It's very simple. Okay, so 2017, MMT into the Green Party. So in my experience, the first thing that happened was David Cobb's internet show. Now, David Cobb is a longtime Green, very well known nationally. He ran, I think, for president in 2004.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's a very dynamic man. He's very active. And he has an internet show on Green News Network. And he interviews. So he called me up and he said, I'm very confused about all monetary stuff. I want to interview you to represent AMI and Warren Mosler to represent MMT and Phil McRee, I forget his first name, for public money. He said, but I don't want you to debate. He said, I want each of you to talk 10 minutes about what you're saying to the public, about the monetary system. And that's what we did. And this is a Walt McRee, yeah. So that's what we did. There wasn't much of a debate, but it was, I thought, helpful for people to hear, very different points of view. And then, and that was, when was that? March. So in July, the National Green Party had their annual meeting in Newark. And MMT had a panel. This is the first panel they've given. And I'll just read, this is the description of, from the Newark meeting. Modern monetary theory is the empirically based explanation of how a monetarily sovereign economic system works. As the United States has a sovereign currency system, etc., etc. So, and I went to that meeting, and I always have a hard time, because I'll go to meetings and I'll say, don't ask any questions. Because I don't trust myself. But I did ask a question, and it got me into a little trouble. But anyway, I'll show you. Okay, so here's the panel. That is...
Steve Grumbine.
What's his name?
Steve Grumbine.
Steve Grumbine from Real Progressives. So he was the speaker. And the theme of the MMT talk, the U.S. has a sovereign monetary system and is the sole issuer of the currency, is one of the themes. And politicians are to blame because they do not know or choose to ignore the government's power to create money. Those are the themes. Okay. Now, this is the interaction I had. Steve Grumbine was talking about QE. And he said, QE is nothing more than rearranging the chairs on the deck. And I said, No, when the Federal Reserve banks create reserves and buy bad debt off the multinational banks, this QE is making the banks stronger. Steve Grumbine said, QE does not add new net financial assets. That's an MMT term. It's just shifting debt around, nothing more. So at this point, one of the audience in the front row indicated to Steve Grumbine with his hand to just go on, don't answer any more of her questions. It was a little unsettling, but not unusual with my experience with MMT. 2018, okay, this year, MMT submits multiple amendments to GP-US National Platform. So in April, the Nebraska State Party asked the National Party if they could have 2 advisors on the National Committee listserv, because Nebraska, the one state party alone, had submitted multiple amendments about monetary reform to the National Platform Committee, and they wanted 2 advisors. Now, there is in the bylaw, you can have advisors, but it's not used very much at all. To submit changes to the National Platform, first they go to the Platform Committee from the state, and then they have to be approved by the steering committee to be discussed and opened up to the National Committee, and then these 130 plus members get a chance to vote on it. So by consensus, the steering committee of the National Party approved these 2 advisors, Fadhel Kaboul and Dr. Joseph Firestone, which, as far as I know, Joe and Howard are MMT proponents, right? They represent a voice of MMT. Okay. So Howard sent a written request saying, well, I'd like to have 2 advisors also for the AMI point of view, for the platform point of view. And consensus couldn't be found about it, so they had to take a vote. And thank goodness, the vote supported myself and Joe in helping Howard and joining him. Much better to be a team. Okay, so in June and July, and there were 7 different amendments taken from Nebraska and submitted, but I'm only going to talk about 5 of them because the other 2 are kind of minor and I don't have too much time. Okay, so I just want to say, before we begin AMI 1, all 5 Nebraska MMT platform changes were voted down by the National Committee.
All right.
Yeah.
You know, we have a money system that wants people to feel, instead of the money system we have now, where you can't, you're not allowed to feel. Okay. So, this is the voting. We got at least 70, 60, we won all of these. The no vote is no, we don't want this in our platform. And thank goodness for Howard and Joe. And thank goodness for the common sense of the Green Party. There is still in the Green Party a common sense. Okay. Before we look at the NMT proposed changes, this is what I noticed. This is my personal experience. MMT ignores bank money, credit creation. They say, oh yes, the banks create it, but they ignore it. They ignore debt levels in the US. They don't really want to look at them. They ignore corporate power and multinational corporations. My experience with them is they don't talk about it. Monopolies, globalization, and history. Okay. Oh, and MMT focuses on blaming the government, deficit spending, which they call the creation of net financial assets, that's their term. Federal taxes do not fund spending. The Fed creates reserves for the Treasury. Money is debt, and government is to blame, government is to blame, government is to blame. That's their mantra. Professor Joseph Hoover's definition of a state sovereign money includes three things: determining the national unit of account, issuing the money, and benefiting from the first use, the signage that's been talked about. Quote from Joseph Hoover: "There is no reason why modern money should not be spent into circulation debt-free by a monetary authority, rather than being loaned into circulation as debt money." So this is our definition of a sovereign money. MMT uses that term for themselves, and they've taken over that term, and they say we currently have sovereign money in the United States. Okay, this is the first of the amendments. Fair taxation is the part of the platform that was being amended. So the way I did it, and I'm going to go through this quick, because it's all language. You know, Stephen's our language, he was so great writing that book, and you know, language is used for control, the controlling the definition of words. Okay, so MMT removes these from the current platform. Taxes are the means whereby we fund our public services. They got rid of that. Applied Social Security and Medicare taxes to investment income above the $106,000 earned current top. They got rid of that. You know. And what they put in, or wanted to put in, was the Green Party knows that at the federal level, taxes do not fund spending. Congress, through its appropriations and the rules it sets for the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, does that. Repeal the Social Security and Medicare taxes. And this is Albert Einstein. Oh dear. Here's the Second Amendment, livable income. There's Albert again, he's wondering what's going on. MMT removes, that's in our current platform. It is both possible and necessary for our government to take back its special money creation privilege and spend this money into circulation. They want to take that out. And then the Monetary Authority will redefine bank lending rules and procedures to end the privilege banks now have to create money. And so they were taking all of that out, and they were substituting this. Government has been reluctant to use its fiscal powers. Our government retains its sole ability to create high-powered government money, reserves, currency, points, and to deficit spend this money into circulation through fiscal policy. And then the new high-powered money, they also call it net financial assets, because as far as I can see, what they're saying is, well, deficit spending really, don't worry about deficit spending by the federal government, because look at all those bonds that are out there in the pockets of people. Those net financial assets, that's what they're saying.
Which people? They got right here.
Well, that's the question, but they don't talk about who owns those government bonds. Okay. We acknowledge while banks do create money, they do not have the capacity to create net financial assets at will like the federal government. Poor Albert. National debt is a part of the platform for national debt. So they're taking out, Greens will reduce the national debt. They take that out. They take out, we cannot ignore the consequence of our nation's past deficits and the related costs of debt service. This is in the Green platform. They want to take that out. Reduce our national debt by increasing taxes on large corporations, super rich, and pollution. They want to take that out. Presidents Bush and Obama have irresponsibly expanded our national debt by trillions of dollars to finance tax cuts for America's wealthiest citizens, war, corporate welfare, bailouts of Wall Street. They wanted that all taken out. And they wanted to substitute the idea that the national debt is a cumulative debt that all Americans together have to pay is not just untrue, it is highly misleading and dangerous. Any American who has bought Treasury securities and bonds is holding that liability, which is an investment for them, a private surplus, though we may call it public debt. The federal government is the issuer of the currency and issues and spends into the economy for public purpose. Sounds great. And people who do not know the monetary system are very attracted to this. Albert is fighting his fingernails. And then the last one is, that I'm going to talk about is the preamble to the whole platform. MMT removes levels of federal revenue are the lowest they have been since 1950 because of tax cuts and breaks for the very rich and corporations. They take that out and they add, amend the following statements from the preamble to reflect the sovereign economics, they're using that word again, as they are, and to acknowledge again that these problems mostly stem from people in our government who are not willing to do what is needed to take care of the problems faced by the American people. Because Congress refuses to use its sovereign power to spend what is necessary to meet the challenges that face us. Some thoughts about all this. Americans are not taught how the monetary system works. MMT says monetary reform is not that hard. No structural changes are necessary, and people are attracted to that. They want to change it. They don't want to wait for the change, and MMT makes it sound fairly easy. You don't have, for one thing, this is not what they say, but you don't have to go up against the banks, just the government. We need to keep speaking the truth of debt-free money and its history. Think about this. How does MMT compare to the themes of the lost science of money, the primary importance of the money power, nature of money purposely kept secret and confused, how a society defines money determines who controls the society, and the battle over the control of money has raged for millennia, public versus private. Now, this is probably the most very important, what's going to happen in the future in our party. So, it was very interesting during the discussion and debate over on the listserv with the National Committee. And one of the people who's an alternate to the National Committee is Rita Jacobs. She's from Michigan. And she's a retired lawyer. And she piped up on the listserv and she said, well, 10 years ago I studied the monetary system and I don't remember that much, but MMT, you're not making sense to me. And towards the end of this whole process, she called me and she said, I just want to say, I think we need a new standing committee on the National Green Party for banking and monetary reform to explain to people in the party what this is all about. And she said, you know, I'm a retired lawyer. I'll look into the bylaws. I'll see how we have to do that. And she came up with the whole proposal. She wrote the whole proposal out. So we so far have gotten, what the process is, you have to get your state committee to propose it to the national party. So we've gotten, Rita has gotten her state committee in Michigan. Howard has gotten his Tennessee state party to send it the request. Kevin McCormick, who's a member of our website, Greens for Monetary Reform, has gotten Texas. And I'm going to be responsible. I haven't gotten New York yet because my New York Green Party leaders, we're in the middle of a very important election. And when the election is over, they want to, we put it on the state listserv and talk about it. But I'm not worried about it. I've gotten support before. And special thanks to Rita for coming up with the idea and spearheading it. And this is the nature of money purposely kept secret and confused. And that's what this attack is all about.
Wow. Sue's awesome as well, of course. And yeah, Sue really does stuff. She's an amazing force. So we're sort of into our lunch time, but we can maybe have a few questions now, or maybe we can have because we were going to show the film from Iceland that we were going to show before, but we can do that tomorrow or sometime later when we've got a gap. So if there's any burning questions right now, or we can pick it up later on maybe.
I think if we're going to start with Wortman at 2, we
Oh,
better
yeah.
make
Yeah, we
it
better.
short.
Okay, make it short, yeah.
Quick questions? Mark?
How do I join the Green Party?
Yeah, I just had a general question. Why do you think during the 2016 election that Jill Stein did not, I guess, talk about monetary reform if she had the opportunity to doing television interviews and everything else? It seemed like it was ignored and it's on the national platform. That's curious to me.
Well, I've never talked to Jill about that, but I've talked to Howie Hawkins. He's running for governor of New York State right now. And I asked him, why isn't he talking about monetary reform? And he said to me, I can't explain it to the public. They don't know about it. So he can't use it in his, he's got a tough, we're trying to maintain ballot access. So he can't prioritize it as one of his major issues, he said. You know. But we can encourage Green Party candidates to step up and become candidates and talk about it. Like, I'm thinking about becoming a candidate just for that reason. That's a big step for me, just stepping out into the public arena like that. But ultimately, I'll probably do it. Yeah, I'll learn from it, and other people will learn from it.
I just wanted to comment on Jill Stein, and I may have mentioned this before in earlier presentations last year or the year before, that I was constantly after Jill to bring it up, and pretty much the same reason was used, that people didn't understand it. Well, I don't think she did either, but hopefully she's got it now.
How does it get on the platform?
Pardon?
I guess how does it get on the platform if nobody understands it? I don't know. That's odd.
We made good arguments.
Just a little comment on the MMT portion of the platform. You know, every really good lie demands a smidgen of truth. And every one of their points has a smidgen of truth in it, and then it's twisted.
Right. Yes, thank you for that.